Welcome to the Monday Warrior podcast. So we all dread Mondays. It's the end of the weekend, the start of a new work week, and essentially the rebirth of the 5-day minimum grind cycle. We've all heard of the term weekend warrior, where we suffer for the week to live it up for the weekends. But what if we didn't have to suffer for the week just to enjoy those 2 days off? What if we could actually enjoy more than 2 of the 7 days of the week? What if we could not only take back Monday, but also Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday? The Monday Warrior podcast aims to challenge your opinions and attitude on the workweek cycle, to look at the new week with opportunity for improvement rather than inevitable dread, and to provide you with the necessary motivation to harden your mentality and to 180 your perspective on your current circumstances. Because at the end of the day, it's your life, and no matter how you frame it, you technically don't have to do anything. You get to. So the topic of this episode is keeping the fire alive. Starting any new endeavor, a new trade, a new hobby, a new diet, new fitness plan, new workouts. It's the easiest part. It's hard, but it's still the easiest part. Starting is always the simplest part of starting any endeavor life cycle, because that's when your fire is the strongest. That's when your determination, your motivation is the strongest. You're starting something new and you think you know what to expect of yourself, but the case is very different. You'll find out for sure once you start going along the process, and that's just the hardest part of it, moving with a new endeavor, sticking with it and making active compromises for it. Keeping that commitment active is a consistency of working with something new, sticking to your guns and values. And that's really the most difficult, but also the most telling and the most rewarding part of adopting any process, of adopting any new endeavor. The fact that you can stick with it a few weeks in, a few months in, and it just gets better and better until it becomes a lifestyle. And that new endeavor actually does become a new legitimate hobby. So how do you do it? How do you stick with, say, a drawing, with stock trading, with woodworking, with a cleaner diet, with more consistent exercising? How do you keep that fire alive? Because like I said, as we know, it's the easiest part. Starting out is the easiest. But going on it, especially when the tough gets going, that's always the stickiest situation. With any new endeavor, journey, task, whatever you want to call it, there's always going to be these periods of stagnation and of disinterest. There are always going to be those blander days, those days where you want to just quit, and days that you just don't really feel like it, man. But by sticking it out, you'll come to understand the value of times like that. The virtue of sticking something out, the virtue of sticking with a problem, with a question for a long period of time. And you'll understand how it's just really a necessary part of the process of learning that tenacity, of sticking with something, of not quitting when something becomes unfavorable or becomes distasteful, and it just could, and it's more likely than not that it's just a hump in the process. Another way to keep the fire alive is to just take time off if you need to. Take breaks if you feel strong disinterest in what you're doing. If you feel that strong emotional disconnect, you feel like this really isn't for you. Take a break. Because at that point, your mental clarity is compromised. And that's when you need to really just step off, take your hands off, and don't mentally resign now. Ask yourself a few questions first. Ask yourself, why am I here? Who put me here? What's the value of this new task? What's the value of this hobby? What's the value of this fitness journey? Where's the heart in all of it? Because at the end of the day, you need to understand that you started this journey by yourself. No one made you or forced you start. You started it. I want to explore camping. I want to be a better artist. I want to be a great author. Think about it this way. Your doctor tells you that if you don't fix your diet and fitness, if you don't fix your nutrition and exercise regimen, you won't live to see your grandkids graduate high school. And yeah, sure, that's going to put a crazy shock through the system because, sometimes we need that trigger of life to just get us going, to give us the incentive to make a lifestyle change when it's about the bigger picture, not about us, but it's still you who made that active decision to get better and to start the new endeavor, to start cleaning up your diet, to start going to the gym, to get better for your grandkids. It's still you that made it. Your doctor just gave you that little push, but it's still you who started it. And that's an important key factor to understand in all of this. So before you mentally resign from anything, if the fire is just suddenly gone, it's lost, and you feel like it's a little distasteful now, and that you have a strong emotional disconnect to whatever hobby or endeavor you started, and you feel like you can't commit anymore, take time to actually and actively reflect your interests and wants in whatever endeavor that you just began, and then revisit the journey once you have clarity of mind and purpose. Because once the mind is unclouded, that's when the most rational decisions can be made, not the emotional ones. If you have commitment issues historically, this is something that's very, very crucial for you to do. Actively reflect your thoughts. Take time off. Take your hands off the endeavor and just sit down and just actively reflect. You can help make a list of asking yourself those questions. Why am I here? What's the point? What's the value? And am I happy? Is there heart in this endeavor, or am I doing it just to do it? And if you genuinely ask yourself those questions and genuinely answer those questions, heart of hearts, at that point, if it's for you, then it's for you. And if it isn't, then it isn't. And you'll know for sure. Because if you're true to yourself, you'll know for sure with those questions. But if you quit and then you later have urges to restart, then you know that you need to ask yourself those introspective questions. You need to sit with your feelings and thoughts more frequently, because clearly the want is there, but the drive just isn't. And that disconnect could be a disconnect with work ethic, with overall commitment, and with just growth and maturity. Some things just take time. So the quote of this episode is, "Insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results." It's a quote by Albert Einstein. And this quote really speaks for itself. It's very straightforward, and it relates perfectly to this episode's topic. Because look, if you're trying a new endeavor over and over again, you still can't find the motivation to keep going, then one of two things, or maybe even both, can be happening. Either one, you need to ask yourself more introspective questions like, am I happy? Why am I here? What am I hoping to achieve out of this, if anything? Is there an end to this? Is there an end to this endeavor, or is the whole point just the process of it all? And really stick with these questions and really sleep on them. Spend time on them. You're in no rush here. Or two, the endeavor may not be for you at this point in your life, right now. This is what I was talking about that just overall maturity part of it. Because just because something doesn't click now, just because maybe a commitment issue may come with a maturity issue, an experience issue, just because it doesn't click now doesn't mean that it won't necessarily or can't click later. And you really do just need to take the time off for yourself to figure that out. And to revisit it again when you feel like you're ready, when you're in a better mental and emotional spot to tackle an endeavor again. So yeah, it is true that insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results. Because clearly you know where that path leads. But at the same time, it's important to understand that insanity is not doing the same thing over and over again to test for new emotions. Enjoying the process is not the result, not always. So don't be afraid to stick with questions and stick with your emotions and to really sit on them and stake them out. Just because you're spending more time doesn't mean you're insane and that you're doing the same thing over and over again. It means you're just trying to find that clarity of heart and that clarity of purpose. And also really just keep that hard check on yourself for happiness and endeavor longevity, because the whole point of it, you got to be happy, man. If you're going to a gym, if you want to look good for whatever reasons other than yourself, that's going to be a hard thing to grapple with when the tough gets going. You need to want it yourself, and it needs to make you happy. Drawing, starting an art project, it needs to make you happy. There's no point otherwise. And it's really about the balance of it all. Being able to balance these new endeavors with your overall lifestyle. And if things mesh well, that's when that real happiness it'll be obvious. You'll be able to feel it in your bones. But you won't know until you stick it out during those long, feel like drought periods when the days just feel a little blander and you're feeling a little loss of interest. Stick with the problem. If you have to, take a little break and actively ask yourself those questions. Why did I start? Why am I here? Who put me here? Who made me do this? What's the value in all of this? And am I happy? That's how you keep the fire alive. Thanks for listening. Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Monday Warrior. Thank you for your time and support, and be sure to keep an eye out for next week's episode that will be available for listening on Sunday night. The clock is ticking. Start and continue chasing the life that you want to live this week, the week after, and so forth. Stay driven, never settle, and never give up. Never forget that the shackles of restriction and limitation start and end in our minds. We are free the moment we and we alone tell ourselves so. Now go out there and tear this week to shreds.